Happy Tuesday. It is Tuesday, November the 7th, the 311th day of the year. There are 54 days left in 2023, and welcome to another edition of Tuesdays with Thom. Well, it may not officially be the holiday season, but it sure seems like it, and it feels like it. It seems to start earlier and earlier every year. Now it seems to begin with Halloween. I didn't really realize that Halloween was a holiday until this year. Somebody said it was a holiday. But man, it sure felt like one. So whether it is official or unofficial, we're starting our holiday season today with a special guest who was on with us not too long ago, Mr. Joe Toles. Joe Toles is a New York State licensed medical health counselor, entrepreneur, and father of 8 adopted young men. He received his Master's of Science in Sports Psychology from Brooklyn College. He specialized in the comprehensive assessment of adolescent needs. Joe has authored his first book, The Spirit of Christmas, which is we're going to discuss today, and we look forward to it. Our show today, of course, is sponsored by the Best Girl Consulting Firm. Let's hear from Best Girl.
Best Girl is a consulting firm that provides customized leadership, access and inclusion, public relations, communications, and organizational consulting services. Clients include Fortune 500 companies, utilities, higher education institutions, small businesses, and associations. Best Girl's team of consultants, led by Joyce Gilly-Gossam, Emily Hedrick, and Sean Jones, partners with business and education clients to promote organizational effectiveness, communication, motivation, and leadership, with always an impact on the bottom line. Best Girl's customized consulting services include strategic planning, corporate communication, executive coaching, fundraising, and economic development.
Best Girl customizes solution that fits your needs. So let's get to our roundtable regulars and talk to Barbara Wallace Edwards, and Michael Walker. Good morning, Barbara Wallace Edwards.
Good morning, Thom. How are you this morning?
I'm doing fine. How are you?
I'm nursing a little bit of a dental problem this morning, so tried to get to the dentist as soon as the show's over this morning. I lost a crown. I didn't lose it. The crown popped out yesterday. So a little bit of issues and had some pain I dealt with last night, but well, that'll all be taken care of in a couple of hours, hopefully.
Okay. So are you taking anything?
Taking some Advil, just over-the-counter pain medication. So
right.
wanted to be able to talk coherently or kind of coherently this morning, so I wouldn't take anything too strong.
Okay.
Yeah.
So what's happening in your world?
Well, Thom, I
Besides
went down. Besides the toothache, yes. I went down to Tuscaloosa to the LSU and Alabama game this past
weekend.
They
let you in?
They let me in. I went in with no Auburn gear, though. It was hard. But I wore purple for LSU because one of my young cousins was a cheerleader for LSU, Jalen Blackwell. This is her senior year, and I had not had an opportunity to go to a game where she was cheering. So I'm so glad that her grandparents invited me to join them, and we had a great time down in Tuscaloosa. Other than dealing with a few obnoxious fans, it was a wonderful, wonderful time. But and LSU didn't win the game. First half was wonderful, but afterwards, after their LSU's quarterback got knocked out of the game, things kind of changed after that.
Get knocked out of the game. Should they have called a targeting?
That was definitely appeared to have been a targeting play, in my opinion. I think the Alabama players should have been ejected from the game, and I think the outcome of the game probably would have turned out different had the young man stayed in the game.
Let me skip over and ask Michael his opinion of the non-targeting call, and what did he think? Michael?
Well, I'll tell you the rules. If you go by the rules, it says with the crown of the head is what they said. If the crown of the helmet hits the player, then it's targeting. The crown of the Alabama player's helmet hit the LSU helmet under the chin. And if you get hit above the shoulders, it's considered targeting. So I go by the rules, but, the game was in Tuscaloosa. I don't think the referee had the intestinal fortitude to call targeting and eject the player.
Yeah, he may not have made it out of the stadium alive had he ejected that player. So
Yeah.
I sort of understand, but it's just not fair.
Well, you know, if you're playing in Tuscaloosa, and playing Alabama, you've got to beat them and the refs. You got to take the game out of the referee's hand. That's the only way that you can beat them there. That's why they hate Cam.
Yeah. Because Cam did. He beat them in the refs, huh? This is not fair to the visiting team, and not just at Alabama, anywhere. I hate for a team not to get a fair chance at winning the game, and so the refs should call the game according to the rules always. And
Well,
that did
I
not
hope
happen.
the guy's okay because the last few years in football, you hadn't been able to hit anybody like that,
Right.
and then you come
Yeah.
down with all your weight on them. They
Yeah.
outlawed that a few years ago, and, so
True.
hopefully the guy will be okay. I guess they
He
didn't.
tried to come back in too, you know.
Yeah, but
Yeah.
they took him back out. So I hope
Yeah.
he'll be okay.
Yeah.
I'm from my school, but I don't want to see anybody
Exactly.
because
Right.
you can get hurt out there when a 240-pound guy lands on top of you.
Right.
And the LSU quarterback is a little slight, really, to be honest with
Yeah,
you.
he's tough though. I like him.
He is. He was tough.
He's
Yeah.
he runs with tiny steps, but he gets there fast.
Yeah.
Yes.
It doesn't look like he's moving that fast.
Get to the sideline, and then he'd go past him, and it's like, whoa, look at him. It was interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He put a move on one of the Alabama linebackers that just made him break his ankles out there
Yeah,
when he was
yeah.
running the sideline. When he faked to the sideline and cut back in, the Alabama defender just broke his ankles then. Man, that was
He's tough, and I saw what's the quarterback? He's with the Houston Texans now.
C.J. Stroud.
Oh, he was tough yesterday too, man.
Oh, wow.
Oh, he was tough. I hadn't seen him play since he's been in the pros. I don't think I even saw him play. He played at Ohio State, right?
Yes, I watched him at Ohio State. I did, and
He was tough.
I told my brother then he didn't like him. He thought he wasn't a good quarterback. I said, this guy can throw. He's a good quarterback. And I always thought he was pretty good. And then if you watch the Ohio State Georgia national championship, you could see how good he was, and now he's showing everybody. It's funny. You bring him up, Tom. They talk about this Wonderlic test and score that they give the players. And supposedly he didn't score very high on that. And they use that as a barometer of how successful you'll be in the NFL, and in particularly if you play in the quarterback position. Well, I guess they can take that Wonderlic score and throw it out the window.
Yeah.
What are the two guys that do the analysis for the NFL? You know who I'm talking about, Michael. They'll start talking about who's going to get drafted and why. And so
yeah. Oh, okay. Sean McKay and this other guy with the helmet hair.
Yeah.
The helmet hair. Yeah.
He kills me with his analysis because he's always wrong. And they were so, it's interesting because they were so high on the little quarterback from Alabama, and he's having a tough time because he's slight, man. He's not a big guy.
He's 5'10" and $190.
Yeah.
And that's not even a thick 5'10" or 190. That's a real slim. So
yeah, I agree.
Yeah.
He's having a tough time.
Yeah.
Of course, Carolina's not any good anyway. So,
well, I mean, that's true too. But Carolina has never had an offensive line to protect the quarterback. That's what got Cam hurt. But Cam was just so big he overcame it. But I never thought that this quarterback was gonna be what they thought he was gonna be. It's a lot of difference when you playing at Alabama behind the offensive lineman that they have. You can look like all world there, because you get the protection, but stepping up there in the NFL, the other teams have some defensive linemen that can come at you too,
Right.
Yeah,
Right.
they do. Yeah, they do. Barbara, you got anything else for us?
Yeah, Tom, I wanted to mention too, Alabama honored their 1973 team at the game on Saturday, and our friend Sylvester Crooms, Coach Crooms, was the honorary captain for the
Was
game.
he?
Yeah, so he was there. I got a chance to speak to him from a distance. So I
Well,
want to say
good.
congratulations to him.
Yeah, I say congratulations to Coach Kroom as well. He's a
Yes.
great man.
Yes, he is.
I've enjoyed my relationship with him. Good
Yes.
man.
And Tom, I want to also give an update. We all have talked about that case in Hoover, Alabama, where the young lady Carly Russell faked her own abduction. Well, that case has finally been tried, and she actually was found guilty, and will spend a year in jail, and has to pay $17,900 in restitution. So that was the outcome. I know that was the talk of the world at one point. Everyone was concerned about her and what had happened to her, and she sort of reappeared out of nowhere with this story about what had happened to her, and it all was fake. So for those who are wondering, that is what has happened with that particular case.
So she's got a year in jail?
Yes, she'll get a year in jail and pay a little less than $18,000 in restitution. They say to pay for the cost of the law enforcement and all the staff that spent all that time searching
I think
for it.
she came off light.
Yes.
Really?
Yeah, she really did.
Because how long was she, quote, missing?
It
About
wasn't
48
even
hours or
48
something.
hours. Yeah, about 48 hours.
And did she ever say why she did it?
It hasn't been released publicly if she has, so no one really knows why, other than they're saying it was temporary insanity.
Well, that's what I was gonna say. I guess when you do something like that, you can plead some kind of way.
I hope she did. I don't know. That was just crazy, all because she say her and her boyfriend broke up or something, or that was the rumor. She never said that.
I didn't watch it. I got up early this morning, so I turned the TV on and I turned it on TCM, and there was a movie. It was, I think it was took place in Paris, but this couple decided they were going to check into this hotel and then kill themselves. And so the man killed the woman, and then he decided he didn't want to die.
Oh my God. Oh wow.
He had second thoughts about it. He killed the woman, but he had second thoughts about killing himself.
So he survived.
Well, I didn't get to watch it all.
Okay.
I just thought when he started hesitating, it's like, man, well, you can't get a do-over with the woman. She's gone,
Right. Yeah, she didn't have that chance to change her mind.
So, Michael, what you got?
Well, got a couple things. The first thing I want to talk about, Tom, you know how you and I talk about the Westerns and stuff and Bonanza and, all horse cart, right, and Ben and all of that stuff. There's a story on Paramount Plus about U.S. Marshal Bass Reeves. Bass Reeves, it's interesting that you haven't heard a lot about him and what have you, but the guy that's doing the book on him, and hopefully they're turning it into a motion picture, they're saying that he was as tough as Billy the Kid and as good with a gun as Wild Bill Hickok and as fast as a horse on the Pony Express. He was 6'2", and they say that he could beat any two men with his bare hands. Dang. They even said that he was so tough that if he spit on a brick, it would shatter.
Oh, wow.
I've heard of Bass Reeves.
The thing about Bass Reeves, he was born in 1838 and passed away 1910 at 72 years old. But what's so ironic is the fact that he was a fugitive. He was enslaved in the state of Texas, and he moved to Oklahoma and became a U.S. Marshal. And ironically, he was arresting people that enslaved him. Not the same people, but the same genre of people that enslaved him. And was a well-known U.S. Marshal. And the guy that was doing the book said that when he was trying to do research, he kept coming up at a dead end. And he went to this place that had a lot of information on the Wild Wild West and cowboys and stuff, and asked the lady about Bass Reev's family. She said, I never heard of him. And then he said, but she was polite. She said, sir, we just don't do Black history here. We don't keep any of that here. So, you know, it's unfortunate that that's the way things are. I guess that's why a lot of things like this, you know, it's not taught in school because there was no documentation of it, whatever. But this is a pretty good story about Bass Reeves. The same guy that did Yellowstone, Taylor Sheridan, he is doing the write-up of this as well. Okay. So it's on Paramount Plus, and it started this past Sunday. They had 2 episodes. I think it's going to be about 10 episodes or so. So
who's playing Bass Reeves? Do you know?
There's a guy by the name of David Olio is his name.
Oh yeah, something. Yeah, I know it.
Yeah. He is the one that's playing Bass Reeves.
Yeah.
Interesting.
So,
I've seen him. He does good work.
Yeah. So I would say tune in and check it out if you can. It's pretty interesting.
So a couple weeks ago we were talking about Coach Prime. Maybe it was last week. So he demoted his offensive coordinator this past week because his offensive line was pathetic. I mean, it was bad. And you kind of felt something was coming because they interviewed Coach Prime during that last game they were on. I forget which game it was. And he said, we need to try something. We can't just keep doing the same thing over and over again. And they kept doing the same thing over and over again and not getting anywhere. And so he demoted Sean Lewis and brought in Pat Schumer to call the plays, who was a former professional guy. But they say that Brian Leftwich might be on his list to be his offensive coordinator next year. Byron
Leftwich. That would be great.
Yes.
He's with Tampa, and he was I forget who he played with, but in college. He was great in college. And so he may be. But he needed I don't know about Sean Lewis, but their offensive line was just sad. And I agree. I agree with Coach. You need to try something. You can't just do the same thing. That poor little quarterback was going to get killed, man.
Yeah, poor Shador.
Yeah, he was getting killed. That was the thing.
Yeah.
He was getting killed, and UCLA they were teeing off on him. And there was some players on UCLA that Shador knew and grew up with, a couple of twins that I think they were playing. For defensive line. It seemed like they had bad intentions when they went at him.
Well, I think they were just trying to, you know the guy, so you got to let him know that hey, you went to the wrong school. You should have come over here with us.
Yeah, I understand. I know how it works, but they had some bad intentions. That's all I'm gonna say.
And they were a lot bigger than him.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So you got anything else, Michael, Barbara?
Yeah, I have one other thing. This is kind of interesting. It's from Alabama. And I wonder, there's a lot of talk about cyberbullying and people that are being bullies and what have you. Well, I wonder, what do you call this? Alabama pastor outed by right-wing website kills himself.
I saw that. Kills himself in front of the sheriff deputies.
Yes. He was a pastor of a church in Smith Station, Alabama, not far from Auburn. And supposedly he lived a double life as
he was the pastor and the mayor.
And the mayor.
Yes.
Yeah, pastor and the mayor. And evidently, he had a propensity to dress like a woman. and, live a double life. That song, I feel like a woman. So I guess sometimes he woke up and he felt like a woman. So he dressed as a woman and do things. And this right-wing website outed him. And I guess it was very embarrassing and too much to handle. And the sheriffs were called to go do a welfare check on him last Friday. And they found him driving down the highway near Beulah or somewhere, and they pulled him over. He got out of the car and with a gun and shot himself in front of the sheriffs.
And I feel sorry for his wife and children. He had 3 children, and his wife he left behind. And there was an article. The article that I read talked about why would this news agency decide to out this one man? There's probably tons of people who are doing the same thing, but why choose him? And he just couldn't handle it. He actually told some of his friends before he actually shot himself that he just couldn't live with himself any longer. He said there shouldn't have been anything wrong with his hobby. He said it was a hobby, and he
well, regardless of what it was,
yeah.
Why would you out him? I don't know. We're living in a different time.
We are.
And there have probably been, they call them queer. I remember they used to call people queers when I was in high school. And I don't know, man. Let people be who they want to be.
Whoever they want to be.
Yeah. Like you, Tom, we had people that were, a little bit different and stuff. People would maybe sometimes call them names, but they just wouldn't pick on them. You know what I mean? Yeah. We never just picked on them. We just accepted that's who they are, but we didn't mistreat them.
Right.
There was no reason to mistreat them because they were human.
Exactly.
I remember a guy that was in junior high with us, and everybody knew of his sexual preferences and what have you, and the way he was, but none of us ever picked on him.
Right.
Okay.
But I also feel like, for me, in our neighborhood and in my high school, we called people, men who were effeminate, we called them sissies.
Right.
That didn't necessarily, but I don't think that translated to sex. Right. I don't think that our minds didn't go that far. They were just effeminate. They were just a sissy, man.
Right.
You know, and you didn't pick on them. If somebody picked on them, somebody else would take up for them.
Right.
Exactly. Yes.
So it's just different now, and I don't know why. So and so, when they put the whatever it was, the trans guy on the Bud Light can.
Yes.
I didn't know anything about it. And so I was in Birmingham, and I was over in the lounge at the hotel, and I ordered a Bud Light, and my friend said, "I can't believe you ordered a Bud Light." I said, "I've been drinking Bud Light for a long time." "Well, you know what it is. They got this, and this guy, they did this, and so on and so forth, and so they boycotted Bud Light." I said, "So what happens if you drink it? Do you turn into a queer or something? What's the deal?" I said, "Does something happen to you?"
It's that cancel mentality that they have. They figure we just stop drinking it, and so we're gonna hurt their pocket, and they want to change everybody else. Just be who you are. Let everyone else be who they are, and leave people alone. I don't understand.
Well, the interesting part about it is, like, going back to what you were saying, Tom, with the people that we grew up like that, and if we didn't take it to the next level, to a sexual standpoint, they were just feminine or, a little strange.
Right.
I don't even think we really cared because we were off into our own things, right?
I'll tell you that one of my friends who I went to high school with told me he was in Nashville, and he ran into this guy who we went to high school with, who was different in high school, smart but different.
Right.
And that's just how I describe him. But he ran into this guy, and they started talking, and the guy asked him about me. and he told him whatever I was doing at the time or whatever. And the guy said, well, he was always nice to me. And man, I was so proud of myself.
Right. Right.
Because this was X number of years ago.
Right.
But obviously I was nice to him. And why not be? You know?
Right.
Yeah.
He was smart as hell. I would not be nice to him.
Right.
Well,
I think he's in a position now, you know.
I think that also people that do that, they have an insecurity issue within themselves.
Yeah.
You know, I've never felt threatened by somebody like that. If they were like that, you know, so be it. I'm going to treat you like I want to be treated. And I guess that's the way I was raised. And
exactly.
You know, there's a lot of people that talk about, some people I think people like that make a choice to be that way. But if you look at the science behind it and biology and stuff, that's not necessarily always the case that they choose to be that way. Sometimes people are just wired differently.
Right. But it goes back to Michael. Some people only like people who look like them, who think like them. If you have any other views, if you look different, your skin color's different, your religion's different, you know, you go to a different school, they hate, and truly I mean hate, people who are not like them. And so they find every reason to not like them, and they verbally say it. You know, some people think it, and you know, they just go about their day and say, okay, they're different or whatever. But there are people who verbalize that and want to cancel out those people who are different from them. So they try any and everything to.
I think that depends on, I guess a lot of it depends on your exposure in the world.
Yes.
And,
yes.
Being in the film and television business, you have all types.
Mm-hmm.
And you know, people get to be who they are.
Right.
You respect them for that, and you're friends with them on that. You know,
right.
I had a great friend in Birmingham. I mean, we were close. He was older than me, and my mom said to me one time, "Well, you know, they say he's gay." I said, "I think he is, Mom." You know,
right?
I said, I'm pretty sure he is.
Right.
And that was the end of it.
Yeah.
He
was nice to you. You were nice to him. I mean, that's the way you should be able to respect people's differences. And
anyway, let's move on. I think Sean's got a minute for us. Let's see what Sean's got to say this morning. Sean.
Good morning. My name is Shantia Jones, and this is Got a Minute. Hello to everyone joining in with us this morning. I hope you all are well and enjoying the weather. I can personally use some weather that is under 70 degrees because in Florida, I'm burning up. Now, today, I have some fun facts for you. Did you know that Psycho was the first movie to show a flushing toilet? Or the green code in the Matrix was actually created from symbols in the code designer's wife's sushi cookbook. Or there are no muscles in our fingers. They function by the muscles in our palms and arms. Last but not least, the word strengths is the longest word in the English language with only one vowel. Thank you all for joining in. My name is Shantia Jones, and this is Got a Minute.
All right. Thank you, Sean.
Sean dropping the knowledge on us.
Yeah. All right. Well, let's move on to the G list. And Hollywood's got the A list. And here on Tuesdays with Tom, we've got the G list. And our G list guest today is Joseph Toles. Joe was on with us earlier in the year. And Joe has written a book called The Spirit of Christmas. And if you remember, Joe adopted 8 boys. And we had that discussion last time. So this time we'll talk a little bit more about his book. Joe grew up in the foster care system. He says there are more than 400,000 children in the foster care system. He has 4 immediate goals for this campaign he's doing with his book. He hopes to sell over 1 million copies of his book, The Spirit of Christmas. 60% of the royalties would go directly to forming a grant for agencies who are providing the services. So let's get Joe Toles on this morning. Good morning, Joe.
Good morning. Good morning. Thank you for having me.
How you doing?
I'm well. You guys were killing me with these. You were talking about all these mental health issues, and of course, I'm a therapist, so it's like, wow, I wish I could chime in. And
I think we might be talking about it, Joe, because we might need to come see you.
Yes, a lot of people need to go.
You know, in fact, some of the issues you were talking about were sort of the motivation for this book. You know, COVID had come around, and politics had changed in this country dramatically, and we're so tuned into hate. And I had retired. I had moved to Auburn from New York, and brought 4 of my kids with me, and I was feeling incredibly helpless because people were falling apart. Nobody really knew what to do about COVID. The leadership wasn't really what it should have been to bring people into a place where they felt safe, and people were scared. And what I found was that the number of people who were seeking out mental health services were increasing and increasing and increasing. And still today, there's just not enough mental health services for folks. So I started creating sort of these little short messages, videos. I had to find a way to shine light in all the darkness. And so The Spirit of Christmas was one of those books. I was having a conversation with my kids, and it was around the holidays, and everybody was still, the world was crazy. And then you put all the craziness of the holidays on top of that. And I was just looking at it, and I was like, man, this is so wrong. People were continuing to try to duplicate what they typically do around the holidays amongst this craziness, maybe as a distraction. And so I wrote this book that really talks about what maybe if we just tweak the way that we think about the holidays, maybe we wouldn't be so crazy. And so really it has a sort of a mental health message, that the holidays are all fine and dandy, but shouldn't it be about mankind? Right. And so that's really the message of the book. And and then as it progressed, I wrote the book, and then I liked it so much, and the artwork was I just made it into I made it into a video first, and then just decided to take those images and make it into a book. And what I'm so bent on is the lack of mental health services, especially for kids in foster care. Of course, that's a area that's obviously very important to me. Again, I grew up in foster care, and I have issues that are going to be throughout my lifetime, and I have kids who have issues that are going to be throughout their lifetime that they'll have to deal with. And so I think, wouldn't it be great to create a program or a grant that would provide mental and behavioral health monies for kids in care and their families who take care of them? And so that's really my goal. I'd love to create, I call the campaign when the holidays aren't so happy. But what I'd really love to do is to have this a yearly, the campaign started in September and it goes through the end of the year. But wouldn't it be great every year if we just stopped for a moment and highlighted a real need in an area and got people to think about it for a second and raise money to provide those services. So I'm, it's all of the things that you guys have talked about. There are mental health issues out there in the world, but so concentrated with kids in care. And I have a Psychology Today page, so you check off boxes, say this is what you can do, and then you see lots of therapists who've checked off every box. It's like, really, you can handle every situation that's out there. And what I find and what we find in the industry is that people are checking off adoption and foster care based on a relationship they had. Oh, I knew somebody that was in foster care. I can handle that. And that is not the answer. We need adoption competent, trauma informed, and culturally sensitive uh, clinicians who can really help with the problems that the kids in foster care have to deal with.
We
Talking and talking and talking. So
no, you're good. The book, it's The Spirit of Christmas. You can get information, or you can purchase a copy or several copies at www.joetoles.com. www.joetoles, that's TOLES.com. So look him up and buy several copies because it's for a great, great cause. Barbara, you got a question for Joe?
I do. Good morning, Joe. Thank
good
you for
morning.
joining us.
Sure.
Um, how how will the money be divided between, I guess, different agencies or different organizations, different individuals? How do they apply for it, or you have a list of organizations already in mind? What is the process?
There will be. My vision is this is going to be well, I would hope it to be a national outreach. And so if I were to meet the goal, then we would do a request for a proposal. So we would ask agencies who are already doing the work.
Right.
We're not really doing any startup. What we want to do is we want to increase the knowledge base of the therapists that are already doing the work,
Yes.
and increase the number of people that have access to this. And the real issue is that most kids in this country that are in foster care are on Medicaid, and Medicaid doesn't pay enough for a really trained, qualified therapist.
Right.
And so that's a real issue. And of course, there's lots of transitions. So foster care, by definition, is temporary. So those kids are with a therapist and they move.
Yes.
So my kids, because I'm a therapist, were in therapy from the beginning.
Right.
But if it were up to Medicaid, they were getting really students that were just doing internships at a mental health agency, and then those students would graduate and then move on. And so there was no continuum of care. And so one of the important things about all of your health needs really is that you have somebody who knows you, understands you, and can follow you for a period of time to the point where it makes a difference.
Right. Right. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
And I know there's over 400,000 children in foster care right now. And of course, you lived in New York, you lived in Auburn. Do you see that there's a difference between the needs in one area of the country versus another?
The needs of kids in care are the same. Even the stories are the same. The basis for arriving into foster care is the same. The services are different.
Okay.
So when I moved to Auburn, looking for services for kids was very difficult. Even finding, I mean, it's obviously New York is very diverse and lots more services, and you would expect that. But it was really very difficult and even as an adult, it's very difficult to find somebody that I could feel culturally connected to. So there are very few male and men of color doing this work.
Right.
So that's a big difference, and that's important. You want to be able to connect to the person. You want them to, or you want to have a feeling that they understand who you are and the road that you've taken, because therapy needs to fit like a shoe, a good shoe,
Absolutely.
not a
Yes.
cheap shoe, a good shoe.
Yes.
And so, I provide all my services. I'm only licensed in New York.
Okay.
So every time somebody here finds out that I'm a therapist, they want to, but can you please? And I
Right.
can't.
Yes.
And I provide all my services through telehealth,
Okay.
which has been, I think, a real improvement in the mental health services in this country, because um, you it takes away the sort of the stigma of driving to a place and being seen and getting out of the car. So more people are taking advantage of therapy than that would never have even before. They don't even have to share it with their family members.
That's great. Thank you.
Michael?
Joe, you mentioned, and this is something I kind of wondered about in your discussion with Barbara. You said the reason that people end up in foster care is the same. What is that reason? And it may be obvious to some, but I'm sure there's some underlying reasons behind it. Could you expound on that?
So let me just deal with my 8 kids first to introduce that. I have 2 boys that were once adopted and they were returned. So they became available again. So can you imagine that you've found some family, they've made a lifetime commitment to you, and then at some point they said, never mind.
Wow.
Um, 3 of my boys had their parents die, and then the family sort of the support, the rest of the family had just disappeared. Um, None of my boys had any father figures, so they were all being raised by single mothers. So if the single mother passed away, that was sort of the end of that connection. So abuse, of course, is abuse and neglect are like the larger areas of how kids end up in care. Either they're removed from their families of origin because they're in danger, or they're just not capable. So we have a lot of kids having kids. In my particular case, my mother was 15 years old when she had me, and this is back in 1959. And my mother is Caucasian, my father is African American. And in 1959, anywhere in this country, that was just not going to happen.
Right.
So they couldn't and shouldn't have been able to care for me. But there was nobody in the. So one side of my family, it was a total rejection, just because of the nature of the relationship. And then the other part of the family didn't have the ability to take care of me. So yes, and there's a zillion other things that happen within family structures that bring kids to care. But the bottom line is either they can't take care of you and keep you safe, or they're drug use, for instance. You know, you shouldn't be and you can't raise a kid in a healthy way if you're an addict.
Right. And Joe, I understand that incarceration is another reason. A lot of kids that end up in foster care, either one or both parents end up incarcerated, and no other family members available to take care of them, so they end up in foster care as a result of that as well.
Yes, and that's also a elevated statistic for kids who are in care. Because remember, your foster care is temporary, and so I've adopted every one of my kids. I'm the only one in my family who hasn't been adopted.
Wow.
So um, that consistent family support is just pivotal. And so we find kids at 18 in some states and 21 in New York. Once you're reached that age, there's nobody being paid to take care of you anymore.
Right.
And so it's like, all right, we'll take you down to social services and you figure out the rest.
Wow.
Many of my kids came with a slew of medications. Some of them were in residential treatment programs. Um, but I'll tell you, every single one of them is off of all the medication.
That's great.
It was more about control.
Yeah.
They weren't preparing these kids for independent living. My oldest was a couple of weeks before he was going to turn 21, and I had seen him in a teen panel, and we had the conversation. All I could think is, "Oh my God, this kid is not ready.
Right.
This is going to be a disaster." And I adopted him. He is he has a learning disability. I have a few of my kids have an intellectual disability. One is on the spectrum.
Right.
Pretty much, my kids are high functioning, but high functioning with a lot of work
Yes.
and a lot of support. So I have the kids that are here. 3 of them are living on their own in Auburn. They're not doctors and lawyers, but they didn't start out that way, right? And
Right. Right.
and my youngest, when I was getting ready to retire and relax, he's in a rehab program,
Okay.
fighting with his demons.
Wow.
And let me say, for those of you who didn't see Joe the first time around, Joe has adopted 8 boys, and from different age groups. And Joe, I forget the group, but you can tell us what the age ranges are. And apparently 3 of them are with him in Auburn, and the other ones are maybe in New York or spread around. It's an incredible. I'm Joe. I got a lot of admiration for you. I just put it to
Yes.
you that way. You're an incredible man.
I appreciate it. Sometimes I feel like I have a real mental health issue and need to be support.
You're an angel, Joe.
Yeah, you are. Yeah,
Yeah.
you are.
But
Michael, Barbara, where
Yeah, you touched on one of my questions, Joe, and I wanted to ask you about this. Kids come into foster care, and then I think they age out, what I recall you saying before. So once they age out, what's next? What happens to them?
it depends on how prepared they were, right? So um, that's why homelessness is a huge issue for kids aging out of foster care. Because they're all of the support that they had, they at least had some place to go, good, bad, or indifferent, and they're really left at the door of social services to apply for things that they had never had to apply for before.
Right.
They're not involved, and they live in the system, but they're not involved in the system. They don't they don't have to they don't know how to fill out these. They don't have to negotiate with social workers that are not going to be taking care of them. It's you go to the DMV. Well, at least in New York, it's just cold and like next.
Right.
Kids don't have these skills, right? And even if you think about the average age now, I think in this country where kids move out of their parents' home for good is 30, and you always have, right, like, holy crap, I'm in trouble, what do I do? Hey mom, hey dad, this is happening right now, what do I do? And they don't have that. They don't have
Right.
anybody to call. Can you just imagine how you touched on suicide, you the loneliness, the isolation, and so drug use goes up, survival skills like stealing or just trying to survive. Um, uh, there's a, a good number of kids become sex workers because they have to. There's nothing. There's no support. There's nobody to say, this is, you know, I tell my kids and I tell people that I'm like the scarecrow in the Wizard of Oz. You can go this way, you can go that way, and there's no scarecrow in their lives for a lot of these kids. And so the what's next is not a pretty picture.
You know, not to make light of the situation, but you kind of struck a chord with me when you said the average age of kids moving out on their own now is about 30.
Yes.
Well, my son is 31, and he called me the other day and said, Dad, didn't you get us AAA? My car broke down and I don't have a way to tow it. He's 31, he's living on his own, but he's calling me. And I buy AAA and give it to both my son and daughter just in case they break down, you know, and I'm not where around, they can call AAA and get towed. But here he is, he's 31. He called me the other day, Dad, didn't you give us AAA? How do I get it? I said, well, I emailed it to you. Well, it's not working. I said, well, pick up the phone and call them. Oh, okay.
Well, but you see, that's a wonderful resource, right?
Yes.
You would think at 30 he would be able to figure out, pick up the phone and talk to somebody. But we rely on the people who've taken care of us. We rely on our parents. And I don't care how old you are. It's like sometimes you just don't want to have to think yourself. And my kids are like, they don't. I always say, and then maybe it's probably not the right thing to say. It's like, think, monkey, think.
Right.
They'll call me and ask me a question. And it's like, well, I typically don't give them an answer. And I ask the question back to them, and I make them think, because most of the time they do know the answer,
right?
And they just want me to give it to them. I'm not Alexa, so.
Alexa and Google are spoiling our kids today.
Exactly.
Yeah. Well, that's the same with him because he grew up in this texting and email generation, and so when he gets the email and look at it and he's trying to respond and it's not working, so he calls me, and said, well, I tried to call him. He never tried to call. I tried to email him and this and nothing's happening and it's all wrong. I said, well, pick up the phone and call AAA and get it done. And then he called back. Yeah, I got it done. I had to set up an account. Okay, thanks. Hadn't heard from him since. Okay. But I'll hear from him again because he'll have another issue and he'll call me.
But those interactions are a blessing, right? If we don't think of it maybe at the time, those are a blessing that you have somebody that you can call for the most ridiculous thing.
Right.
And just imagine not having anybody to call.
Yeah, that's sad. Joe, I had an opportunity to serve on the board of directors for a residential group home here in Birmingham for kids in foster care called Children's Village.
Mm-hmm.
And they have been concerned about kids aging out of the system for a long time and have actually, I think probably maybe 10 years ago, purchased a home near their property that they had planned to turn into a transitional home where kids who are aging out of their system, out of the Children's Village program, could move to that transitional home, still have someone there that can kind of oversee their day-to-day activities. They'd be somewhat independent, being able to go work or go to college or whatever, but live there and still have someone to guide them. But they haven't been able to secure the funding for that. But those type of things are there's such a need for that because those kids they don't have anyone that they can pick up the phone and call to say, well, what do I do in this situation? What's next? I need help with this. And you're right. That's why so many of them end up homeless or on drugs or incarcerated because they don't have a support system, anyone to go to. So that's a huge need.
Yeah, and I'm sure they weren't looking for a house with 400,000 beds.
Right. No. Exactly.
Those programs when they're there are helpful. But you're talking about if we're rounding it up to always it's about 400,000 kids at any one time. Not all of those kids are aging out of foster care.
Right, of course.
But the numbers, it doesn't, and then, the issue is it's costly.
Yes, it is.
So, people aren't really looking to fund that on a long-term basis. I had the pleasure of working with several demonstration projects in New York when I was first starting out in my career. working with relocated homeless families, substance abusing mothers who had just given birth to kids. And then ultimately, when everybody gets excited about the idea, and they have the program and they publicize it, and it's really the politicians say, look what I've done. But it's one funding stream, and when that funding stream ends, if it's a 3-year demonstration project or a 4-year demonstration project, done.
Wow.
And you've opened the door for these people that you're working with, and then you shut it real hard and fast.
Joe, how old were you when you started adopting a young man?
Old.
Okay.
Thom, I don't know what happened to me. I part of my issues growing up in foster care was they're really mostly relationship based, and sort of the timidness. I've always wanted to do it. When I was a child, I used to say I wanted 12 kids, and all the adults one adult would hear, and they called everybody over and say what you just said again, and they say I want 12 kids, and they all laugh at me. And I really, now that I have 8, I don't want 12.
That was going to be my follow-up. What was Christmas like with 8 kids, or what were the holidays like? How did you manage that?
Well, to answer your question, I started when I was 49.
Okay.
My first child when I was 49. And holidays are hard.
Yeah.
You remember of my kids, 6 had no father figure whatsoever in their lives ever. And so now they have a father, right? We don't, and again, the same thing for me. We didn't know what to do. We don't know what to do. They're very awkward. We see, the Hallmark movies or whatever, the Santa Claus is coming to town, all of the things that are coming out. We weren't that wasn't part of our growing up experience. And so I'll tell you what, on the first Father's Day, nobody said anything to me. And I got mad. I got in my car and I drove, and I was and I'm calling friends. They're like, I was like, I can't believe it. Like, and one of my friends said, "What are you, an idiot?" I was like, what are you talking about? It's like they don't know what a father is. And then of course it hit me, because sometimes I have to be snapped back into reality. And they still don't know. I think Father's Day for them, and maybe for a lot of kids, is that dad takes you out to dinner. But not that they take me out to dinner.
Right.
I do something for them. So holidays are interesting, because celebration, at least in my journey, has been odd. I went to Auburn. I got a track scholarship, and I did very well here. Auburn, in fact, was sort of a reawakening period, or just the start of life for me. But before that, I was one of the best runners in the country. Papers every week, going around to competitions all across the country. My foster parents never ever saw me run. Nobody ever came. So when I think about some of my biggest achievements in high school, what I remember is how everybody else's parents were there for them, and that there was nobody there for me.
Wow.
So, notwithstanding my coach, who was a savior for me,
Yes.
but I remember seeing. Those are the images that come to mind at first. I remember people who I beat, and the parents consoling, or the ones that had won and their parents celebrating. So celebrations, when you grow up in a lifetime, it becomes part of all of this is part of your identity formation, right? so my identity was lacking the celebration. So, people today still get mad at me because I don't, but I sort of withdraw on my birthday. It's like, what do you mean you're going out? Like, I don't want to do any of that stuff because it's odd to me. It feels uncomfortable. So, and this is a lifetime journey. So I keep getting better and better, and my kids have forced me to look at myself. Kids are wonderful. Like, they, never cried as much until I started having kids. I could be stoic, all of my emotions, everything was about me and protecting that space. Man, that's all blown. It's gone. It's gone.
Out the window.
Mhm.
Excuse me, guys. I've got to drop off. I've got a press conference I got to be at in 30 minutes. Joe, it was great talking to you.
You too.
And I look forward to talking to you again. And I will pick up your book and try and support you.
Thank you very much.
Okay. And you are a hero to me as well. I
Thank
find a
you.
lot of inspiration, and I'm in awe about what you've done. So thank you.
Very
Thank
much.
you.
All right. Thank you, Michael.
Okay. See you guys.
Okay. Joe, let me tell everybody again, it's joe.toles, right? .com?
JoeToles.com.
JoeToles.com.
Or they can go to JosephTollesFoundation.com as well.
Okay. JosephTollesFoundation.com. That's great. Okay, so pick up a copy or several copies of the book, and let's support Joe and his young people as we go forward. Okay, Barbara, you got anything else?
I just want to say again, thank you, Joe, for what you're doing. It's making a huge difference in a lot of lives, and not just the 8 boys that you have in your home and have brought into your home and taken care of, but with what you're doing and writing the book and donating these funds, it's going to make a huge difference in the lives of a lot of people in need. So you are my hero as well. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Bar. I hope so. Right. I'm gonna plug a movie that I just saw the other day. And that's like, I saw a movie called After Death, and
Yes.
it was absolutely awe-inspiring. It was really about it's a documentary about what people who have had near-death experiences see and saw, and the results are incredible. And I left the movie theater thinking and feeling very reinforced that the answer is love,
Yes.
and that I recommend that movie for everybody because it's incredible.
Joe, you've made me think. I mean, I think about my birthday, and my mom, even as an adult, my mom always made me this cake on my birthday. And even when she got to the point where she was so sick she couldn't do it, but that was always an expectation for me that my birthday would be special. And to not have that, to not have anything similar to that would be that's got to be a tough way to grow up. Got to be
Yes.
a tough way to navigate things as you go forward in life.
It's interesting because I think I always want the lesson, right? So I was built to do this, right? I was prepared to do this, and I think that's my mission in life, to be able to do this.
Yes.
Certainly, I question sometimes, couldn't I have learned this a different way, right? But it would not be then who I am today.
Yeah.
Right.
So
Right.
it's a sort of a spiritual, faith-based feeling that I have a mission in life, and I have to I'm glad to say that I'm almost 65, that I'm as energized about it as I was when I was younger,
That's great.
20s, and so I'm not finished. So I'm having conversations like this really raises awareness, and I'm glad that you guys found this important enough to talk about and have this discussion. And we just have to keep making sure that people know that there's hope in the world.
Well,
Thank you.
you're always welcome here. And as you continue to do things, let us know, and we will let others know.
I appreciate it very much.
We,
Thanks.
we appreciate you. Thank you very much. Thanks, Joe. Okay, my closing comments, or as I see it. The call came into 911 requesting a police officer. The voice sounded like a child's voice, so the 911 operator took it seriously and dispatched an officer right away to the address. When the police officer showed up at the house, the mother met him at the door and was surprised to know that her 2-year-old had called the police. The officer did not know what was happening. The mom didn't know what was happening. The mom summoned the child, who promptly came into the room, walked straight to the police officer, and gave him a big hug. And that was what the kid wanted. The child just wanted to hug a police officer. And that is how I see it on this November the 7th in the year 2023. And that's our show for today. We want to thank the audience. We appreciate you. I want to thank our G-list guest, Joseph Toles. What an incredible guy. Thank our sponsor, Best Girl Inc. Thanks again to the TWT team, Barbara, Sean, Emily, Michael, and Joyce. And that's it for this October. No, it's not October. For this November the 2nd, the 7th. Remember, a day without a smile is a day wasted. Enjoy yourself. Make every day count. Stay safe. Peace.